The sun was setting behind me, throwing long shadows across the dirt road. My road, the one I'd driven 1,000 times to reach my family's ranch. Except now, there was a gate, 8 feet tall, chain link, padlocked, with a sign that read, "Property of Meadowbrook HOA. No trespassing." I could feel my daughter's eyes on me from the passenger seat. 12 years old enough to understand humiliation when she saw it. Her science project was in the back, 3 weeks of work on sustainable ranch composting systems, due tomorrow. And we couldn't get home. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, from rage so pure it felt like swallowing gasoline. The air smelled like cut grass and fresh concrete. They poured footings that morning, making it permanent. I could hear the distant hum of a riding mower from one of the cookie cutter houses half a mile back. Normal suburban sounds, like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't just stolen my property rights. Behind us, 3 cars were lined up. Neighbors, from the old ranching families, blocked from their own land. I could see Tom Hendricks in my rearview mirror, 92 years old, gripping his steering wheel with arthritic hands. He'd been using this road since 1954. My phone buzzed. A text from Kristen Chern, HOA president. She wrote that she hoped I was enjoying my new neighborhood amenity and that gate access cards were available for $500 a month per household. My daughter asked in a small voice what we should do. I looked at that gate, that illegal, audacious, criminally arrogant gate, and I smiled, because Kristen Chern had no idea who she was dealing with. See, before I inherited this ranch, before I moved here to heal after losing my wife, I spent 15 years as a county land surveyor and 3 more as a civil infrastructure consultant. I knew property law the way priests know scripture, and I'd spent the last 6 months documenting every single mistake Kristen Chern had ever made. The gate she'd just built, it wasn't on HOA property. It was on mine, and that meant I didn't need to fight her. I just needed to let her keep digging. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is just letting tyrants walk themselves right into the hole they dug. What would you have done? And where are you watching from? Let me back up. 18 months earlier, I'd inherited my grandfather's cattle ranch, 200 acres of Texas scrubland at the end of a county road. The kind of place where you can hear silence, where the biggest decision is whether to fix fence posts before or after coffee. I needed that desperately. My wife, Caroline, had died 2 years prior. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and brutal. Our daughter Emma was 10, and I was drowning. The Seattle suburb where we'd lived felt like it was made of glass, everything sharp, everything reflecting loss. So when the lawyer called about Granddad's property, I didn't hesitate. I loaded everything we owned into a truck and drove south. The ranch sat at the end of Mesa Ridge Road, a private gravel road that had served 5 ranching families for 70 years. Granddad's property was the last parcel, bordered on 3 sides by open range and on the north by nothing, empty land, until 6 months after we arrived. That's when Meadowbrook Estates broke ground. It happened fast. 100-acre development, 80 homes, manicured lawns, street lights, and an HOA with teeth. I didn't think much of it at first. We were separated by a good quarter-mile of undeveloped bufferland. Different worlds. Then I met Kristen Chern, 5'10", sharp bob haircut the color of polished mahogany. Designer athleisure that probably cost more than my track payment. She smiled like a shark, all teeth, no warmth. She appeared at my door on a Saturday morning with a clipboard and a Starbucks cap. She introduced herself as Kristen Chern, Meadowbrook HOA president, and welcomed me to the neighborhood. I remember thinking that was weird. I wasn't in her neighborhood. She said she was doing courtesy rounds and making sure everyone understood community standards. She handed me a packet, 47 pages. I told her, polite but firm, that this didn't apply to me, as I wasn't part of the HOA. Her smile never wavered as she explained that Mesa Ridge Road ran through their development plan now. So technically, I was accessing my property through their community, and they just wanted to make sure everyone maintained appropriate standards. The word appropriate landed like a threat. I should have seen it then. The barn was where I'd started healing. Granddad's old workshop, filled with tools older than me. I'd been teaching Emma woodworking. She'd made a birdhouse, then a bookshelf, then a small desk for her room. Every weekend, we'd spend hours out there, sawdust in our hair, old country radio playing. It was the first place since Caroline died that felt like home. 2 weeks after Kristen's visit, I got a violation notice. It stated that a structure located at my address failed to meet community aesthetic standards, citing fading paint and a non-compliant roof with a fine of $150. I called the HOA office, got voicemail, called again. Same result. Then another notice arrived, citing overgrown native grasses that exceeded maximum height limitation and calling them a fire hazard, with a fine of $200. The overgrown grasses were wildflowers, native Texas bluebonnets that bloomed every spring. They'd been there for decades. I drove to the HOA office, a converted model home at the development entrance. Kristen was all sympathy and hand-wringing. She said she totally understood, but rules were rules, and they had to maintain property values for everyone. I repeated that I wasn't in the HOA. She tilted her head and said the covenants were a little complex, but that Mesa Ridge Road was considered a shared access easement now, and all properties accessed via shared roads fell under their purview. Citing Section 14C, I went home and read Section 14C. It was gibberish, legal-sounding word salad that said nothing, but the fines kept coming. Unapproved vehicle storage, $300. Unauthorized livestock structures, $500. Non-conforming mailbox, $100. Every 2 weeks, another notice, another fee. I tried ignoring them. Then I got a letter threatening a lien on my property. That's when I started digging. I pulled the county plat maps, the original survey records, the easement agreements, and I found it. Mesa Ridge Road had never been deeded to the HOA. It was a shared private road with explicit access rights for all 5 original ranch families' rights that ran with the land in perpetuity. The HOA had no authority over that road, but more than that, they'd been billing all 80 homeowners a monthly road maintenance fee of $75 for a road they didn't own and weren't maintaining. That's $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year, going into Christensen's pocket. I realized something then, sitting in my barn at midnight with survey maps spread across Granddad's workbench. This wasn't about paint colors or grass height. This was a con, a slow-motion shakedown. She found properties she couldn't quite control and buried them in fake violations until they either paid up or sold out. And I'd inherited the perfect target. Game changer. I shifted into investigator mode. 15 years as a land surveyor meant I knew how to read property documents like a doctor reads x-rays. I started with the basics, pulling every deed, covenant, and easement tied to Mesa Ridge Road and Meadowbrook Estates. What I found was a masterpiece of legal corner cutting. The HOA had filed a blanket easement claim in 2019, asserting control over Mesa Ridge Road based on a shared infrastructure agreement, but the agreement had never been signed by the original ranch families. It was just filed, as if filing made it real. Kristen had counted on nobody checking and made copies of everything. Then I drove into town to talk to Tom Hendricks. Tom was the oldest of the ranching family's 92, sharp as a tack, with a voice like gravel and a handshake that could still crack walnuts. He'd been a county prosecutor for 30 years before retiring to run cattle. I found him on his porch, mending a bridle. I asked him if he knew the HOA had been charging homeowners for road maintenance. He spat into the dirt and said he'd figured, and that they tried that nonsense with him last year, but he sent them packing. I asked how. He said he told them he'd see them in court, and they backed off. He asked if they were hassling me. I told him it was worse. They were building a case to claim the road outright, and if they pulled it off, they could block our access and force us to sell. Tom set down the bridle and told me to show him. We spent 3 hours going through documents. Tom knew property law like a second language, and he spotted things even I'd missed. He finally said that this woman was smart, sloppy, but smart, and that she was betting nobody fought back. I told him I was fighting back. Tom smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. He said then I'd need help. He introduced me to Yolanda Martinez. Yolanda was a civil engineer who'd worked on county infrastructure for 20 years before going private. She was in her 50s, wore steel-toed boots under her business casual, and had a laugh that could shatter glass. She asked if I wanted her to survey the whole road. I told her every inch, and that I needed to prove the HOA didn't own it. She asked how fast. I said fast. She grinned and said she liked me already. Yolanda worked weekends. She brought ground-penetrating radar, drones, and a laser theodolite that looked like something from NASA. She mapped every utility line, every property corner, every inch of asphalt and gravel, and she found gold. She told me the road was entirely on the original ranch easement, not 1 inch crossing into HOA territory, and that they had zero claim. I asked if she could testify to that. She said she could do it in her sleep, but evidence wasn't enough. I needed Kristen to overplay her hand. So I waited. The violations kept coming. I paid nothing. Let them pile up. Each one was documentation of harassment. Then, 3 months in, Kristen escalated. I came home one afternoon to find an HOA inspector in my driveway, a bald guy in a polo shirt with a camera, photographing my barn. I called out, asking if I could help him. He jumped and said he was just doing a routine inspection. I asked if it was of my private property. He stammered that it was a road maintenance check. I told him he was 50 feet from the road and that was trespassing. He left, fast, but 2 days later, I got a notice claiming I had verbally threatened an HOA official. That was a lie, and it was in writing. I filed a police report for trespassing and defamation. The officer who took the statement, a tired-looking guy named Rui's side when I mentioned the HOA. He confirmed it was Meadowbrook and said I was the 4th complaint this month. I asked what the others were. He wasn't supposed to tell me, but he was also clearly tired of Kristen Chen. He listed harassment, fraudulent billing, and one alleged assault where a homeowner said the HOA president shoved her during a meeting. I felt my pulse quicken and asked if there was an investigation. He said it was informal, nothing official yet. I left the station with a plan forming. Back home, I called an old colleague from my surveying days, Marcus Webb, who'd left the field to work in county code enforcement. I told him I needed a favor and explained the road fee scam. Marcus whistled and said that was ballsy, asking if I had documentation. I told him I had enough to wallpaper a courthouse. He told me to send it to him and he'd pass it up the chain. 2 weeks later, Marcus called back. He said the county was opening an inquiry, quietly, and that they wanted to see if there was a pattern. There was, because while I was gathering evidence, Kristen was getting bold. She started showing up at county meetings, lobbying for Meadowbrook to annex the remaining ranch properties. She wanted eminent domain. She wanted the county to force us to sell. That's when I knew she was dangerous. And that's when she violated my sacred space. It was a Sunday morning. Emma and I were in the barn, working on a rocking chair for her grandmother. The radio was on. Sun was pouring through the window. Then I heard the engine. A truck pulled up outside an HOA maintenance vehicle. 2 guys got out with clipboards and started walking the property line. I stepped outside and asked if I could help them. The older one, a guy with a neck tattoo and an attitude, didn't even look up. He said it was an easement inspection for HOA business. I told him he was on my property. He claimed the road easement extended 20 feet from the center line and that they were good. That was a lie. The easement was 15 feet and they were 30 feet in. I told them to leave now. Nectar smiled and asked, "Or what?" I didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I stated that they were trespassing on private property, had been asked to leave, and that continuing to remain was a criminal act. He stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged and said, "Whatever, man." They left, but when I walked back to the barn, I saw it. They'd spray painted an orange X on the side of the building, a condemnation mark. Emma was standing in the doorway, staring at it. She asked, her voice small, if they were going to take the barn. I knelt down, put my hands on her shoulders, and told her no, sweetheart, they're not. But inside, I was screaming. That night, I called Tom and Yolanda. I told them they'd escalated and that we needed to end this. Tom's voice was granite as he asked what I needed. I told him I needed time and a trap. The trap was elegant. Kristen wanted control of Mesa Ridge Road, so I was going to let her think she had it. Through Yolanda's survey work and Tom's legal digging, we'd uncovered something beautiful. The quarter-mile buffer zone between the ranch properties and Meadowbrook Estates was county land and undeveloped right-of-way held in trust for future expansion. The HOA had been treating it like their backyard. More importantly, they'd been building on it. Those decorative stone pillars at the Meadowbrook entrance. County land. The community garden they'd installed last year. County land. And the gate they were about to build across Mesa Ridge Road. County land. We just had to let them do it. I started by filing a formal complaint with the county about the ongoing harassment, attaching every violation notice, every fraudulent fine, every trespassing incident. I copied Officer Ruiz, Marcus at Code Enforcement, and here's the key: the local news. A reporter named Jenna Ortiz from KXAN called me 2 days later. She said she got my complaint and asked if this HOA story was as wild as it sounded. I told her it was wilder, but that I needed her to wait. I explained that if she reported now, they'd blow her up and bury it, and that I needed her to wait for the big moment. She asked what big moment. I told her she'd know it when it happens. She agreed to hold the story, Meanwhile, Kristin was moving forward with the gate plan. She'd gotten bold, sent an email to all Meadowbrook homeowners announcing a security enhancement project to control access to community roads. She even held a meeting. I attended. The community center was packed, mostly HOA residents, a few ranchers. Kristin stood at a podium with a slideshow, smiling like a tech CEO unveiling the iPhone. She cooed that safety was their priority and that this gate would ensure only authorized vehicles accessed their neighborhood. Tom raised his hand and said that road didn't belong to her. Kristin's smile never wavered as she said the HOA had maintained that road for 3 years and had documentation. Tom said it was fraudulent documentation. The room got quiet. Kristin's smile tightened as she told Tom that if he had concerns, he was welcome to file a formal dispute, but the gate was moving forward. I stayed silent. Let her think she'd won. 2 weeks later, construction began. They poured concrete footings at dawn right across the county right-of-way. Yolanda was there with a drone, recording everything. By noon, the gate frame was up. By evening, the chain link was installed. And by the next morning, I couldn't reach my home. That's when I called Jenna Ortiz. I told her it was time. She arrived with a camera crew 2 hours later. But I'd also made other calls. To markers at Code Enforcement, to the County Sheriff's Office, and to the Texas Department of Transportation, because Mesa Ridge Road was technically a county road, which meant blocking it without a permit was a state offense. Everyone arrived at once. It was beautiful chaos. Jenna's camera crew set up on the road, filming the gate. Marcus showed up with 2 county inspectors and a roll of official stop work tape. A sheriff's deputy pulled up in a cruiser, lights off but present. And then Kristin arrived. She climbed out of her white Tesla, heels clicking on asphalt, saw the crowd and froze. She demanded to know what was going on. Marcus stepped forward and identified himself as being with County Code Enforcement. He told her the gate had been constructed on county property without permits and that they were shutting it down. Her face went pale as she insisted it was HOA property. Marcus said, "No, ma'am, it's not." He unrolled a survey map Yolanda's work and stated that the entire area was a county right-of-way and that she'd been, and asked Miss Chern if she could comment on allegations that her HOA had been illegally collecting road fees. Kristin's eyes darted as she claimed she didn't know what we were talking about. I stepped forward and said we had financial records, $70 to $1,000 a year in fees for a road they didn't own, and that it was fraud. The deputy moved closer, hand near his belt. Kristin looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. She hissed, "You." I said, "Me." Her composure shattered. She spat that I thought I was smart, but I was nothing, just a broke rancher squatting on trash land. Tom said softly, "Careful, cameras rolling." She spun toward him and called him an old bastard, accusing him of putting me up to this. The deputy interrupted, telling her he needed her to calm down. She shouted back, "Don't tell me to calm down." She yelled that this was her community, that she built this, that we couldn't just. The deputy told her she needed to step back. She didn't. She stepped toward me, finger jabbing the air. She screamed that I ruined everything, that she had worked so hard. Asking if I knew what she had to do to make this place, I said quietly, "Stealing from your neighbors." The silence was deafening. Kristin seemed to realize, all at once, where she was, what she'd said, who was watching, the camera, the county officials, the deputy. Her hand dropped. She whispered that she wanted a lawyer. Marcus handed her a document and explained it was a cease and desist on all HOA activity pending a county audit and that the gate would be removed today. The deputy added that they would need her to come to the station for questioning regarding fraud allegations. Kristin looked like she might cry or scream. Instead, she turned and walked back to her Tesla, but before she got in, she looked at me one last time. The arrogance was gone, just fear. She said she hoped I was happy. I thought of Emma, standing in the barn doorway, staring at that orange X. I said, "I am getting there." The fallout was swift. The county audit uncovered 3 years of financial fraud. Kristin had been skimming road fees, inflating maintenance budgets, and pocketing the difference. Total estimated theft, $184,000. She was arrested 2 weeks later, charged with fraud, embezzlement, and criminal trespass. She pled guilty to avoid trial. 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, and full restitution to the homeowners. The HOA was dissolved. Meadowbrook residents voted to form a new, volunteer-run association with actual oversight. Tom was asked to serve as interim treasurer. He accepted. The gate came down the same day the charges were filed. I was there. Watched them cut the chain link and haul it away. Emma stood beside me, holding my hand. She asked if we could go home now. I told her, yeah, sweetheart. We can go home. But the story didn't end there. Because here's the twist. The county, grateful to have uncovered the fraud, offered to lease the right-of-way buffer zone back to the ranch families for $1 a year. Legally protected access, in perpetuity. And the gate posts, still there. We reproposed them. Tom, Yolanda, Emma, and I spent a weekend turning that gate entrance into something new. A community message board. A place for the 5 ranch families and the Meadowbrook residents to post news, events, offers for help. We planted wildflowers around the posts, Texas bluebonnets, and Indian paintbrush. And we added a sign, Mesa Ridge Road, shared by neighbors. Owned by no one, the barn still stands. The orange X is gone, painted over with Emma's help. We finished the rocking chair. It sits on Grandma's porch now. Some weekends, kids from Meadowbrook come by to learn woodworking. Emma teaches them. She's 15 now, confident in a way I couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. Last month, one of the new HOA board members, a woman named Stephanie, stopped by with a pie. She said she just wanted to say thank you, and that a lot of them didn't know what Kristen was doing, and that I saved them. I told her the same thing I'll tell you. I didn't save anyone. I just refused to be bullied. And I had helped people who believed that doing the right thing mattered more than staying quiet. Kristen Chun got out of jail last year. I heard she moved to Arizona. I don't think about her much. Mostly, I think about Emma in the barn, sawdust in her hair, building something beautiful. I think about Tom, still mending bridles at 95, sharp as ever. I think about Yolanda, who texts me survey jokes I don't understand but laugh at anyway. And I think about Caroline, who taught me that grief doesn't mean giving up. It means finding new ways to build. The ranch is still here. The road is still open. The wildflowers bloom every spring. And every time I drive past those old gate posts, I smile. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's turning their weapon into your garden. Now it's your turn. Share your HOA horror story in the comments. Tell me what happened. Tell me how you fought back or how you are still fighting. And stay tuned, because next time, the pool guy fights back. And trust me, you won't believe what he finds at the bottom of the shallow end.